You're listening to the Engaged Club podcast, where we believe that engagement of members, staff, and managers is the key to a thriving club.
Our aim is to help you become a better club manager by giving you practical, actionable club management and marketing advice.
I'm Roger Kincaid. I'm the marketing director at Off Course Golf. We make member and customer engagement tools for club managers that make growth and prosperity their business. You can find out more about what we do at offcourse.golf.
And I'm Jim Hope. I've been managing clubs and working in the hospitality business for nearly 40 years. I now proudly serve the members of the Derrick Golf and Winter Club in Edmonton, Alberta as their GM and COO. I'm thinking this time I'd like to sort of carry on from a brief discussion we had in the last podcast that I think you did, where you had talked about that rogue director. I think that was...
First of all, Jim Hope, CCM, CCE. Don't lay this at my feet, okay? I mean, I just asked the question. Someone with as much experience as you have should surely have some advice on how to handle that director who uses that board meeting as the opportunity to vent and rant a little bit. I just put it out there as a question, man, and you've come back almost immediately with a whole episode about it.
Well, but this is your fault, and you're the one who brought it up. And I'm the one who have to try and figure out what, other than run and hide, I got a couple of strategies that you can use if you get one or two in your board, and what happens if you have more than that.
Okay. I want to know, though, you say if you have one or two on your board, is this a certainty that every single club manager at some point in their career is going to have to deal with this?
Without question. Absolutely. And deal with it probably more than once in their career, if not more often than not, they're going to have to deal with it.
Listen to what Jim's got to say in this episode and then give us your feedback, your advice, whatever it is you've got that comes to mind. You're listening to the Engaged Club podcast. This is proudly brought to you by the Canadian Society of Club Managers. Jim, let's get into it.
All right, so let's just assume, because most clubs have boards of 9. And those 9 directors are made up of 3 that are elected each year for a 3-year term. Okay, so each year you've got 6 remaining, you've got 3 new people coming in. And, we spent lots of time in previous podcasts talking about the role of the nominating committee, how important the role of the nominating committee is. We've talked about, your board governance model with consent agendas and doing board evaluations and doing self-evaluations and trying to get better and in-camera sessions and, what agendas look like and makeup of committees and who's chairing committees. But at the end of the day, what you're dealing with as a club manager is 9 individuals in a room. And I've worked at clubs and I've talked to club managers who have worked at clubs that on paper, they have the absolute perfect governance model laid out for what they're going to do. And they've agreed that that's what they're going to do. And they've had years where that's what they've done, and everything went perfectly. And then all of a sudden, they get this director on board who just is, just not on the same page as everybody else. And, life goes to hell in a handbasket really quickly. I had a story from a fellow club manager who was dealing with a director who was involved with them in their article and governance change at the club. He was a proponent of this new governance model. He was a proponent of the changes to the articles. He brought those forward to the membership. The membership approved the changes to the articles so they could have a more progressive governance model. He gets elected as president. And the first thing he does the day after he's elected, he comes into the GM's office and says, hey, there's a bunch of things that we've approved over the last couple of years that I'm not happy with that we're going to be revisiting. And the GM was just absolutely dumbfounded. He goes, what do you mean we're going to revisit? You're the one who you're the artist of these. You're the one who implemented these. He goes, I know, I felt I had to be on the board, but they're not something that I believe in. And the group that I play with, and as soon as you hear that, then it's like, oh crap, this is going to go sideways really quick. Group I play with, don't believe in some of the decisions that the golf committee's made, and they don't like some of the directions we're going in turf care. And at the end of the day, which was interesting, is that director was removed from the board because there was provisions in the articles that the directors could remove another director. And he was removed from the board as president. He was removed from the board because of the fact that he was such an outlier all of a sudden to a governance model that he believed in. So that's the good that's the good news of that's the good news of what happens with a rogue director, right?
Yeah, I was just about to ask if there's a mechanism you can put in place that can help you, mitigate something like that. And I'm glad you got to a happy ending quickly there.
Yeah, and I don't know if there is, Roger. Like, I just sometimes people just surprise you, right? It's like a bad hire, right? The reference came back great, but man, they're a shitty worker, and someone's not fitting in with our team. How the hell did that happen? We did everything we were supposed to. So it happens from the director's side as well. This guy had seen 2 years of him being just a great director, and then his third year when he was president, it was like all hell broke loose. And he goes, "Where did this come from?" Like, didn't see it coming at all. Was absolutely sideswiped by it. So in that case, they had a mechanism in their articles that allowed the current board to remove a director from the board. But that took a lot of strength. Of the 8 remaining directors in that case, probably, I'm going to say 4 were really strong that what this director was doing was inappropriate and unacceptable based on what they had all agreed upon was the way that they were going to act and behave and operate under the model they were going to operate under. He probably had 2 that were, hey, that's no big deal. He's not that bad of a guy. This isn't that bad. We can work our way through this. Mr. Manager, you just need to suck it up. Everything's going to be okay. You would have had 2 that would have been just sitting on the fence going, well, I'm going to go whichever way the majority goes, that's the way that I'm going to go too. And often the 2 that are the ones that are, hey, this isn't that bad, can turn the other 2 to their side and bring 1 or 2 more of the other 4. The next they've got the majority, and this thing just continues then all of a sudden. Because who wants to ruffle the feathers? Do I want to see him in the lounge after? And him and his buddies know that I was one of the guys that got him kicked off the board. Do I want to have to look his wife in the eye and say, I'm the one that embarrassed your husband by having him removed from the board? So often people don't want that kind of a distraction at their club from their enjoyment. So they just let it go. And at the end of the day, the casualty is the staff because of the fact that they're the ones who have to operate under this new model. So if you've got a strong board and they can either sometimes you don't remove the person, but they make sure that they are completely ineffective and they get shut down when they go rogue. You can get away with that as well. If you've got a couple that are like that, it becomes a little more challenging because often they'll side with each other and they'll become, again, they may become the loudest voice or they're going to match the other 2 loudest voices on the board. And, they may swing some of those middle votes because, we always say in this business that it only takes 2 or 3 rogue directors to potentially get rid of a manager or have a manager lose his job. So, if you've got 1, you're okay. If you've got 2, you're a little concerned. And if you get to 3, then, you're polishing up your resume and calling the local headhunter to say, hey, if anything comes up, keep me in mind because I might be available. But at the end of the day, again, you can have all of the policy and procedure and strategy in play from a paper standpoint, but it comes down to the individual. And if you've got a strong president and a strong vice president and let's say a finance chair, which might make up your executive, if you've got a strong, committed executive, they often can defend the procedures at the club enough that there's no damage that's done. I remember once I had a past president. He was past president for about 15 minutes. So it was right after our annual general meeting, we would go into, we call a board meeting. It was already predetermined who the president was going to be. We had a vote who the new president was going to be. Election took place. Then we all went out and had a drink in the lounge where the rest of the members were. And the past president, who was and still is a good friend, this was a couple of clubs ago, came in to see me and came into my office. He says, you got a minute? Yeah. So we go to the office. He said, hey, I just got to let you know, like, that was an awesome year we just had. We got a lot accomplished and I really enjoyed working with you. And I said, I enjoyed working with you. You're one of the best presidents that I've ever had. He said, I'm just going to give you a piece of advice for the year going forward. And I said, what's that? And he said, don't bring anything up. Don't try and do anything. Don't bring any capital projects up. Don't try and be progressive at anything that you want to do. This is a great year for you to sit back, relax, and just enjoy the ride. And we've got a long-range plan. We've got a capital plan, a 5-year capital plan that's been approved, and we've got a number of fairly significant capital initiatives that we were going to do. And he goes, not next year, you're not going to do it. He said, your life will just be hell if you try and bring any of this forward. And what he was saying to me, and I found out after the year, was that this was a president who wanted no disruption. He wanted no chance for anything to go wrong. Have you ever met those people, Rod? They're so protective of not making a mistake that they don't want to do anything. That's their way of not making a mistake, is you just don't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. If we never, ever, ever take a step out, then nothing bad will ever happen to us.
Absolutely. So, and he was one of those, and I didn't take my past president's advice for about the first 4 months. And
right.
Hey, this isn't the capital budget. We budget for this. He goes, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should defer that till next year, and or let's wait till later in the year, and we can see how the year's going before we implement that. Well, what do you mean? The budget's been approved. This is something that we've had the funds allocated for. The members have seen this 5-year capital plan. I think they're expecting, this probably be a good time. Maybe we just hold off. I think the economy is going to go get soured. And what do you mean? Oil's trading $125 a barrel. It's never been better. I think it's something we should do. Nah, not this year. And so about 3 months into this thing, I finally heeded to the advice of my past president and just sat back and enjoyed the ride and didn't bring anything forward. He was never embarrassed. There was never a mistake made on his watch. And consequently, at the end of the day, he felt he had a good presidency, and I kept my job.
Right. So, Jim, taking all of this in, and I always kind of get to the end of these episodes where, you talk about, dealing with board personnel and stuff like that, as an outsider, right? Because, I do work on the outside of the club as a, marketing helper. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is that, if you've got that rogue director, instead of confronting that head on and trying to influence change between the two of you, the best strategy is to insulate yourself with the rest of a cooperative board that has its eye on the long-term health of the club.
Bingo. You're not going to get anywhere butting heads with this person at every single turn. That's not going to get you. And if anything, at the end of the day, it might even turn off some of the other directors because of the fact you might be coming across as being aggressive towards that person.
That really then puts a lot of credence, even more credence than before, in those episodes that you've done previously and recently as well about, making sure that governance model is in place and that you've got the buy-in, and making sure that nomination committee is in place and they understand their objective for the long-term benefit of the club, so that, when we do have these incidents where somebody comes in and somebody is going to be that rogue that just wants to vent or disrupt or just cause a bunch of negative upheaval, that you've got all of the the buttresses in place to make sure that you can maintain the slow and steady forward progress of the club.
And that's absolutely correct, because when you put the director's guide or the board policy manual in front of the balance for the directors and say, well, here's what we've agreed upon, because we remember in other episodes we talked about people sign off on that at the beginning of the year. So are we suggesting that we want to change this? And if we do, you as a board need to put a motion forward to change the policies that are laid out in the board policy manual. That all of a sudden brings reality to them very quickly. And then they realize, okay, well, we don't want to do that. And then they'll be the ones who will confront, or they'll work with that rogue director or directors to say, no, this is what we've agreed upon we're going to do. This is the agreed upon format they're going to work with under, what our rules are and what the management rules are, and that's what we've got to stick to. And that's the way that you can get the balance of the board online in a very concerted either, because of the fact that they know that what they're doing is supporting something they've already agreed upon. Yeah,
great stuff again, Jim. And I know this is one of those episodes where you might get an email from somebody at hello@engagedclub.com that really just says thanks. I'm sure this is one of those issues that keeps a lot of club managers awake at night. So really insightful stuff, really helpful stuff.
We really hope this episode is a big help to you. If you know somebody else that could benefit from this episode, please share it and let's grow together.
Yeah, the archive of this podcast is available at engagedclub.com, where you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our Slack space for more discussion. And of course, we'd always like to hear your thoughts, questions, ideas, comments, anything you have to say via email at hello@engagedclub.com. Thanks for listening.